Hello everyone, this is the Casual Fan. Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. Two amazing talents, two charismatic personalities, and arguably two of the best talents to drive a Formula One car in their era. Yet, for the new age fans, Hamilton holds a much higher position on the pedestal as compared to Fernando Alonso. But is that the reality? Is Lewis Hamilton a better driver than Fernando Alonso? Or, well, let's frame it in a better way. Out of Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, who is the better driver? Now in this video, what we will try to do is try to find a definitive answer to this question. Now before we proceed, let me make one thing clear. The purpose of the video is not to take a dig at Hamilton or Alonso. Both of these drivers are truly the legends of the sport and in many ways stood out with their driving more than any other driver in their era. So having said that, without further ado, let's find out who was the better driver. First of all, if we look at it from a statistical point of view, then Lewis has a clean sweep over Fernando. 7 championships as compared to just 2. 103 wins compared to just 32. 103 pole positions compared to just 22. And so on. Hamilton's career statistics are just on another level as compared to Alonso. However, there's one key stat that is worth looking into, and that is the number of seasons Alonso has driven a front-running car as compared to Hamilton. For Alonso, he had a front-runner in Renault from 2005 to 2006 and the McLaren in 2007. After that, he drove a Ferrari from 2010 to 2013 before the disastrous move to McLaren Honda. In all, Alonso has had 7 years where he's had a front-running car at his disposal. Compare that to Lewis Hamilton then. Lewis made his debut in 2007 with McLaren, and for the most part, throughout his career, he has driven a front-running machinery except, well, maybe the 2009 season where McLaren was probably slow to adapt to the new regulations. In all, Lewis has had 14 seasons where he has had a front-running car at his disposal. Looking at this crucial stat, we can see that Lewis has had twice as many seasons in a front-running car as compared to Alonso. To add to this, Alonso has never driven in a dominant machinery like the Mercedes that Lewis has been driving throughout the turbo hybrid era. No wonder Hamilton's stats are blown up because of that, and what this also means is that mere statistics like these are truly not the best indicators of relative driving ability. Now, to make a better judgment of the relative abilities of these two drivers, what we will do is we will compare the relative performance of these two drivers when both were in front-running machineries, because that is probably the only time when we can make a direct comparison between these two drivers. We will be looking at the relative performance of these two drivers in 2007, 2010, 2011, 2012 and 2013. After 2013, it's hard to make a direct comparison, as while Hamilton drove the Mercedes at the front of the grid and contended for the title every season, Alonso struggled at Ferrari in 2014, and then the mediocre McLaren-Honda partnership pretty much sunk the ship in his career. Now, to measure how these drivers performed in these seasons, I am using a certain metric to evaluate their performance for every race. Every race result has been broken into 5 categories, and every race result will be allocated to one of these categories. Now, for every race, the performance can be categorized as first, a standout drive where the driver performed at an extremely high level. The second, where a driver like Alonso or Lewis had a good weekend and were able to beat their teammate. The third, where their teammates had the better of them. The fourth, well, where the drivers had an off weekend. And the fifth, where their races got compromised because of external factors like reliability or probably an accident where they were the innocent victim. Now, every race result will be allocated to either of these categories and points will be awarded on the basis of that. Not talking about points, for every standout performance, the driver gets plus 4 points. For every race where they beat their teammate, they get plus 2. For every race where they lose to their teammate, they get minus 2. And for every off weekend, they get a minus 4. And in the end, for every race compromised by an external factor, they are given a plus 1 point. Now, after allocating all the races of the season to these categories, we calculate the total points for both the drivers, and the driver that has the better score will be considered the better driver for that season. Okay, so with the criteria out of the way, let's begin and try to find out who out of these two legends can be considered the better driver. For the 2007 season, I will, admittedly make an exception and award this season to Lewis Hamilton. Why? Well, in 2007, Fernando Alonso was a reigning two-time world champion. He had just beaten Michael Schumacher in a straight shootout, and in the eyes of many, he was the gold standard of racing in Formula 1 at the time. On the other hand, Lewis Hamilton was a rookie. He was never expected to challenge Alonso, and he was never expected to even be a contender for the title. Yet, in 2007, he was more than a handful for Alonso and finished the season ahead in standings. Considering all the intangibles involved, it's hard for me to not consider that Lewis Hamilton was the better driver out of the two in 2007. Now, moving on to the 2010 season, Fernando Alonso almost won the title only for it to get away from him in the last race of the season. Hamilton too was in contention going into the last race, but it was more of an outside contention more than anything. Alonso would finish the 2010 season as the runner-up, while Hamilton would finish the season 4th in standings. Alonso had 5 wins to his name as compared to just 3 for Hamilton. Now, coming to the analysis part, Lewis had 3 races where he was the standout driver. He was in superlative form in Turkey, Canada and Spa, all of the races where he drove the wheels of the McLaren and was hard to keep up with. Alonso, on the other hand, had 4 races where he was truly a class apart. His wins in Italy, Singapore and Korea being the shining example of the Spaniards' talents. While both of the drivers beat their teammates 9 times, it was noticeable to see that Lewis lost out to his teammate just 2 times the entire season, while Alonso lost out to Felipe Massa 4 times. Both had a couple of weekends where their performances were probably not up to the mark. And for Lewis, this was the case in Australia and Italy, while for Alonso, the British Grand Prix and Belgium turned out to produce less than desirable results. Alonso on his part did not suffer from any significant reliability issues or external factors that costed him a result, while Hamilton had 3 races where reliability issues cost him a decent result. In the end, when we finally add up the points for the season, Lewis scored 21 points overall, while Fernando Alonso had 18 points to his name. Judging from this, we can clearly see that even though Alonso finished ahead of Lewis in the championship, it was still Lewis who was the better driver that season. Looking back at the season, we can see that Lewis suffered from far too many reliability issues, and if that was not the case, then, well, who knows, maybe he might have even finished ahead of Alonso and become a world champion. Now, moving to the 2011 season, Alonso finished the season 4th in the standings, while Hamilton would finish behind him in 5th. While Alonso had just a single win to his name that season, Lewis was able to pick up 3 wins in his McLaren. Coming to the analysis, what is striking is that Lewis had 4 weekends where he was genuinely a standout performer, while for Alonso, this happened only at Silverstone and Japan. Another important thing of note is the relative performance of both drivers against their teammates. While Lewis had only 5 weekends where he beat his teammate, Alonso seemingly dominated Massa at Ferrari and beat his teammate a whopping 14 times. At the same time, while Lewis lost out to his teammate 5 times that season, Alonso lost out only twice at Malaysia and China. Surprisingly, in 2011, Alonso did not have a single off weekend. Now, what we mean by this is that he was never severely off the pace or made a race-ending mistake throughout the season. While Lewis, he had a horror race in Monaco, Canada, Hungary and Belgium. In the end, when we add the respective points, we have Lewis scoring just 1 point for the 2011 season, while Alonso scores a landslide win over Lewis by having a total of 33 points. Looking back at the 2011 season, I think it's fair to say that the 2011 season was probably the worst F1 season in the career of Lewis Hamilton. And even though, yes, Alonso improved from the 2010 season, Lewis digressed massively and even lost out to his teammate Jenson Button. So, until 2011, Lewis leads 2 seasons to 1 against Alonso. Now, talking about the 2012 season, and it was this season where Alonso produced one of the best seasons of his entire career, as he challenged for the title in a car that was just not comparable to what Sebastian Vettel had at his disposal. Sure, Alonso lost out in the end, but the season was the stuff that defines legends. Alonso finished the season second in the standings while Lewis finished the season 4th. Interestingly though, while Alonso had 3 wins to his name, Lewis picked up 4 race wins in that season. Now coming to the analysis part, Alonso produced 5 races where he just stood out as compared to the rest of the grid. His performances at Malaysia, Valencia, the win at Germany and the podium in India were top-notch. Hamilton at the same time had 4 such weekends. His win in Canada was utter domination. So was the win in US after a long battle with Sebastian Vettel. While Lewis lost out to his teammate 3 times that season, this happened just once with Alonso when Massa was told to hold position in Korea. While there's not much to say about the off weekends for either of the drivers, one thing that stands out here is the plethora of reliability issues suffered by Lewis, as he lost out in as many as 5 weekends. As compared to Alonso, who had just 2 scenarios where Alonso got wiped out in the first lap at Japan and at Spa. In the end, when we calculate the points scored by both the drivers, Alonso is yet again the runaway winner with 44 points as compared to 25 for Lewis. So interestingly, at the end of the 2012 season, Alonso is level with Hamilton with 2 seasons apiece and all to play for in the 2013 season. Now, coming to the 2013 season, Lewis had moved to Mercedes while Alonso was still at Ferrari. Although neither of the 2 drivers had a legitimate shot at the title that season, Alonso still finished second in the championship while Lewis will finish the season in 4th. Alonso had 2 race wins to his name while Lewis had 1 at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Coming to the analysis, Alonso put together 3 spectacular weekends at China, Spain and Singapore, while Lewis put together a great race at Hungary. The biggest differentiator between both the drivers in 2013 was their relative performance as compared to their teammates. While Alonso dominated his and did not lose out to Massa even once, Lewis lost out to Rosberg on 7 different occasions. On the other hand, both had 1 poor weekend each, Spain for Lewis and Malaysia for Alonso. In the end, if we look at the total points scored by either of the drivers for the season, then Lewis scored 5 as compared to 37 for Alonso. Because of this, Alonso does prove to be the better of the two drivers, as he had 3 seasons where he was the better driver as compared to 2 seasons where Lewis was the better one. Now, a couple of key takeaways here is the fact that despite Alonso edging out Lewis in the end, these stats are a clear indication of how good Lewis was even before he stepped into Mercedes. Secondly, for Alonso, this shows that statistics are not everything, because the car a driver has at his disposal surely makes a difference. Is Lewis Hamilton a more successful driver than Alonso? Probably yes. Having 7 world championships compared to just 2 for Alonso is a testament to that. But is Lewis Hamilton a better driver than Fernando Alonso? Looking at the analysis, it's hard to say yes. Now, does the analysis have its flaws? It surely does. Lewis had a stronger teammate as compared to what Alonso had at Ferrari, and that affects his points. But even if we keep a margin for error for Lewis to compensate for that, Lewis has still lost out resoundingly to Alonso in 2011, 2012 and 2013. And finally, from the analysis we can say that Alonso might just be the better driver of the two. So these were my views. What do you guys think? Drop your views in the comment section and please like, share and subscribe to support the channel. I hope you guys liked the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.